All right. This is this is very interesting. I wanted to join in. Oh, hi, Eric, and hi, John. Hope you're well. I really wanted to try this format and to really see how it works and to see if I could just share some light on something that's very passionate to me, which is virtual reality technology. And with virtual reality technology, there's a large area. So there's XR technology where we look at augmented reality. You have virtual reality. Augmented reality is most often thought of as, I guess, Snapchat filters, where we can put layers on existing reality, and then you have, and then you have virtual reality, where you're actually in a environment. Could be actually a real environment, so images of real life, or it could be a CG or computer generated environment. And then you have mixed reality, which is a blend of the two. I tend to focus on virtual reality, particularly in education. And I've actually written a book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Virtual Reality, which the aim was to show the value of exposing students to virtual reality technology. Not necessarily the technical part or the not necessarily the technical part or the how to. It is more of the why. So it gives you the why for it. And what's interesting, as a matter of fact, I was speaking to my students about virtual reality, about technology, and we were discussing innovation and how fast things are changing, and particularly how we've seen things change so quickly during the pandemic. And one of the things that I pointed out was that the book that I wrote, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Virtual Reality, that was a manuscript. So I completed the manuscript, I want to say in 2019. So I wrote on the manuscript in 20, I want to say from 2018 to turning on the camera, I think. Okay. Yeah, from 2018 until 2019. So the manuscript was finished in 2019. The book was published in 2020. And the technology and processes that I mentioned in the book, they weren't outdated, however, they're dated. So by the time the book came out, there were other technologies that could be used. So for example, in the classroom right now, I use Verbella frames quite a bit as far as incorporating it in lessons and exposing students to that technology. There's also Mozilla hubs. And then, so these technologies, when I was writing the book, these were not, they weren't developed, they weren't out there, they weren't implemented, and now they are. And that goes to show how fast technologies are changing, particularly in the technologies with virtual reality that you can use actually on your computer versus having the headset, the Quest, or the Oculus. The other thing is that I was showing them that, okay, right now we're using the Verbella frames in class, there's another platform called Spatial, which is a newer platform. So now Verbella and Mozilla Hubs are kind of, they're dated. So we got something newer. So I think it's very interesting to see how things are developing, particularly in education. And the point I'm trying to make with all of this, and when we get into virtual reality technology and technology in general in use in education, I think as educators, we need to focus more so on the skills and not necessarily the tools. And what I mean by that is there are various, okay, I don't know if my camera, I wanted to turn, there we go. There we go, there's the camera. So we don't want to focus on the, so much on the tools. I would say it's better to focus on the skills. And what's meant and by that, and I outline this in the book, is that, and I'll give an example, is that if you think about programming, programs change. And I tell you, I had a colleague of mine, so my background is accounting, had a colleague of mine who works at a major, is a controller at a major bank. And we talk about a software called Tableau. And he told me, we go to lunch, and he told me about how they were using Tableau at the bank. So I went out, learned Tableau, and then we met not too long later. And then I'm telling him that, wow, I've been getting really great at Tableau. I love the software, also Power BI. And he said, well, we don't use Tableau. It's too slow. We use Abacus. So I said, wait a minute. So you see how these things are changing, and there's a programming element to it. So fast forward from that conversation, I want to say maybe 3 months, I'm at a accounting conference, and I'm listening to one of my colleagues talk about how it's important, the skills, and that, okay, if you're working with students, you have Excel, work with them on programming the cells, to get used to programming, to get those skills together. If they can learn Python, if they can learn Power BI, the more of these tools they can get exposed to, the more skills they have, and the more easily they're able to adapt to the various programs. So I laugh because I mentioned to her that lunch conversation I had with my friend, and how I talked about Tableau, and now they're using Abacus, and she was familiar with it. And that's the point. These tools keep changing, but understanding how they're implemented, how to apply them, and how to use them is the important part. So to tie that back into my book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to Virtual Reality, I was using 360 videos, an Oculus Go. Those were many of the conversations I was having in the book. Now there's programs such as Verbella frames and Mozilla Hubs, and now you have Spatial, and there's others. So it's understanding how it can be implemented and used in the classroom, the skills, which I think are very important. And in my book, I talk about just to tie this in my book, I talk about another conference that I attended, and the president of our association at the time, the American Accounting Association, he was giving a talk on technology and changes, and he was mentioning how he went with employers to find out what is it my students, my accounting students need to know for you to hire them and give them jobs. And they told him they need to know Power BI. So he went back, created a course, a Power BI course. So now his students will graduate having the skill of Power BI. Why is that important? I'm thinking, wow, he's already designed a course and he's got these students, they're going to get jobs. My students, I'm not even able to, we don't have the resources. At the university I was at the time, we didn't have the resources to create a course like that and that quickly to the students. So now I'm thinking, wow, my students are automatically at a disadvantage. They're going to graduate with a degree, and when they get into the marketplace, they're going to be at a disadvantage because there's other students entering the marketplace with more skills than they have. So I said, what can I do? So the idea is that, and I'm not the only one who faces this challenge, and the idea is that in those cases, you may not have the budget. You may not have the knowledge of particular technology, the resources needed, but what you can do is expose your students to something. And this is where I learned about thought experiments, hypothetical situations. So even if you can't get a hold of the technology directly, you can expose them and let them see the technology. And that can be a help. Let them know it even exists. I had a student in one class that I let him know, oh, wow, we got a question. What's the best way to expose my 5-year-old daughter to VR? That's a great question, Eric. I would say if you have access to a laptop, let her get on a program called Verbella Frames. Verbella Frames.
Okay, Verbella Frames.
Yeah. Oh, there you are. How are you doing, man? How are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I came across your book, and yeah, she's starting kindergarten in the fall. I don't know if there's any kind of VR program or anything, but at home I've got had like an old Oculus Rift, but it's just like my attic. But coming across your book is like, yeah, this what you're saying is really resonating. Just like exposing them to these tools, and yeah, in 10 years, who knows how VR may be, kind of culturally accepted as a standard.
Yeah, that's true. I'm telling you, Eric, it is the way things are moving so fast. It is unbelievable. What I would say is it's free. So if you go to verbella.io, if you got a Gmail, you can sign in there, and then just let her move around, expose her to it. Verbella is a lot. I would, in my opinion, it's more user friendly versus Mozilla Hubs. Mozilla Hubs is another one. You can, with Hubs, if you said you've got a Rift headset, you can access Hubs. I think that works better with a headset, but you can just use it on your computer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think in that way, she'll get exposed to it and see how it works, and gets used to it. So and it's not a I would say a shocker. So you start getting that exposure to it early on.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for the advice. Because I was always like wanting to kind of expose her to it, but wasn't sure like when I should, and also what is a good first experience, because there's games like Beat Saber and stuff that just seem a little bit too intense for like the first time you put it on if you're a young kid.
Yeah, I agree. I would say some what they call low immersion VR, Verbella. If you go on YouTube, you can search what they call 360 videos. So if you go on YouTube, you can find some videos, some different scenes where you can move around in different environments as well.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, thanks. I'll hop off stage, but yeah, I think this is a great show so far. Really enjoying it.
Thank you. This is my first time on Hotline, so this is interesting. How did you find me exact on the Hotline, if I might ask?
Yeah, so I'm actually a developer on it, so I
Yeah.
kind of cheated a little bit, but
Gotcha. I was wondering. And Mark is on here as well, so I'm assuming you're a developer as well. So
yeah, so Hotline's still pretty early. Thanks a ton for being an early tester on it and everything.
mhm.
The way it's working right now is creators are expected to kind of bring an audience, and then once we are a little bit further along, we'll start adding discover features so that when you go live, people will come that you don't bring yourself. But right now, it's kind of designed to be sort of like like a small, intimate thing that you do with your community, and you'll get a recording afterwards and visualizations of how well your content's performing, so that you can have this evergreen content. You could create a podcast out of it, blog post out of it, and that's kind of the idea right now. So it's still pretty small, pretty early.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, well,
This
thank
is
you.
good.
I'll hop off stage, and yeah, loving the content in the show so far.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it. But those were some good points that were brought up as far as the 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 different levels of virtual reality. So when you think about it, there's low immersion and then there's higher levels of immersion. So if you have the headset, the Quest, or the Vive, those are higher levels of immersion. But there's things you can go to online, and really there's things that we use every day that are VR that um, we may not actually recognize as VR. So if you're going to buy a house, usually they'll use something called a Matterport camera. So you'll see a virtual tour. So that's low immersion VR. You've got 360 videos, so which you can easily search on YouTube, and they have these it's actual invite. It's not computer generated. So someone has a 360 camera, and they go and share images or videos. You can look at um, different scenes and get exposed to it. And I think being exposed to it, it doesn't cause you it's not a shock to the system. And it can also give you other ideas of how the technology works and can be implemented as well. I think I gave an example. I was teaching a class, and like I said, there's this software, Microsoft Power BI. And I was in the accounting class, and I thought it was important for them to know about the software. I wasn't able to add it to the course or to teach the students. So I had constraints on that end. However, I was able to tell the students, hey, you could go on your own and learn Power BI. And actually, by the end of the course, I had one student who said, now this is funny because you never know how people listen to what you say. So when I said Power BI, Microsoft Power BI, no one said anything. So I just thought it kind of went in one ear and out the other. And then later, this student told me at the end of the course, he came, it was the last day, he came up to me and thanked me because he got promoted. He actually got promoted. He worked in a finance role, and he got promoted because he went, learned, studied, and gained some knowledge of Power BI. And he was able to get promoted. Did I teach it to him? No. So I think when, especially that question that was just asked by Eric about exposing, some of those things are just letting people, talking to people about it, letting them see it, sometimes just letting them play with it. And you get exposed to it and you understand it and you start getting skills with using it. So I think that's very important. And another reason why I would say it's very important is because technology is rapidly changing. Things are constantly moving, and the more, and it's hard in some cases, depending on what field you're in, it's hard, it's not possible to keep up because it's so rapid. However, what is possible to do is to build skills and understand how it works and how you can implement it. So I know how, I just started learning spatial. If you go to spatial.io, I just started learning spatial. Great. I know how to implement that in the classroom. So I have that skill. I know how to tie that into the students and what value that will bring. And that's because I've used other tools, Mozilla Hubs, Verbella Frames. I've used my Samsung gear to create 360 videos and to put all of these things together because I've been exposed to it and I started using it. So I know how it works. So if there's a new VR tool, I'll have an idea and the skills to put it together and to use it. The flip side is now my students, they may not be experts with it, but they've been exposed to it, they can grasp it and they understand it and they see how it works. And that can help them moving forward. I've got one more story before we wrap up, just to tie this in. And that is, and if you think about this, so last December 2019, so December of the last quarter of 2019, and I want to say the beginning of 2020. So that last quarter of the year, as far as class quarters, I taught in person. Well, I'm a university professor, so I taught in person, and I would have guest lecturers come in. So I would have business owned entrepreneurs come into the class who are outside of the city, and they would come into the class via Zoom. So this is the end of let's say this is the end of 2019. I would have them Zoom into the class at a specific time. I would record the visit on Zoom, and then I would post it in our learning management system so the students, they can click on the link and they can watch it if they weren't able to come to class, if they missed class. And at that time, what was so amazing, none of the students were using Zoom. So now you have to think fast forward to now, we're in 2021. I had a meeting. So I have some students who will reach out to me for advice about business, asking questions, what have you. We scheduled a Zoom meeting. And this student told me, it was like, Professor, it's so amazing that in 2019, when we had class, that was the first time I've ever seen or heard of Zoom. And now, right now, I'm using Zoom. She told me I'm ahead of my time, but it wasn't me. It's just that exposure. And she also mentioned by seeing how it worked in the classroom, it helped her. She wasn't as nervous. She wasn't as afraid of this new technology because she's seen it, she saw how it worked and how it helped her. So I think that's important. That's something to think about as well. Another thing, and if you get a chance to watch, I did a TED Talk, technology anxiety. If you ever get a chance to speak with any, I guess, Gen Z, younger people, Gen Zs, one thing that I've heard, because we talk in class right now, we talk a lot about business models. And I'll ask right now, ask this students, would you phone in to a restaurant or an establishment to make your order? Because you can. Would you call them up? And what I've seen and heard was that many students have said no, because there's anxiety around talking on the phone. So you have to think about, there's anxiety, and many, depending on your age, you've grown up and been used to the smartphone and texting and emailing and not necessarily talking on the phone. So I hear a lot of that as anxiety of talking on the phone, which seems interesting. Again, exposure. If you have exposure to something, just like the student said about Zoom, she saw it, saw how it worked. It wasn't very, she had no apprehension in using, because she saw the value in it. So I think exposure can also help with different areas of anxiety as well. So this has been great. I'm going to wrap up right now, and I wanted to share and this is my first time using this platform. But if you'd like to reach me or to reach out and sign up for my newsletter, I have a monthly newsletter where I send out virtual reality case studies. Or if you just have any questions, like to talk, I am always happy to connect. You can also reach out to me on, it's pretty neat. You can post this on, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. I am Mfon Akpan. So this has been great. Thank you so much, Eric, John, and Mark. This has been awesome. I think the platform is it's very good and easy to use. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming in.